Listen, he's coming for us. We're both gonna die.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Devious Intent, the show all about spotlighting villains. Today we'll be looking at the titular monstrosity from Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. The inspiration for Nemesis came from the Umbrella Corporation's desire to create bioorganic weapons with a higher level of intelligence. After the Mansion incident, they realized that their creations were just too uncontrollable and simple-minded to be viable products, so it became their priority to change that. Eventually, they improved the Tyrant to the point where it could operate within mission parameters. This new model of Tyrant began being mass-produced, but their European branch wanted to take it further and create a BOW that was even more intelligent. Ultimately, they decided to inject the new model of Tyrant with a parasite known as Nemesis that they had developed. This parasite feeds on the T-virus in the Tyrant as it slowly takes control of its body and mind from within. With the parasite in control, the Tyrant is transformed physically and granted enhanced strength, resilience, and most importantly, intelligence. This new entity is named Nemesis after the parasite inside of him. He's a nearly indestructible abomination with the tactical know-how to track down and eliminate anyone Umbrella tells him to. As a way to test him out, Umbrella deploys Nemesis during the Raccoon City outbreak with a mission to eliminate all remaining members of the S.T.A.R.S unit. Of course, this also includes Jill Valentine, the character you play as. Nemesis is a relentless threat that you have to deal with throughout the game, and believe me, he is not easy to deal with. He's such a formidable enemy that the game begins to feel like Clock Tower when he's around, because instead of stopping to fight him, you're trying to avoid him more than anything. He's faster than you, his attacks are all incredibly powerful, and he can take anything you can throw at him without breaking a sweat. If that wasn't enough to deal with, he can also whip out his custom-made rocket launcher whenever he wants and start devastating you with ease. They really nailed the look of Nemesis. His skin is just gross, and he's also got giant tentacles weaving throughout his neck and shoulder. He has no lips, which is already pretty horrific, but this has the effect of giving him a permanent snarl. Combine that with his one completely white eye, and you have one vicious-looking monster whose face just screams, "I want you dead." You never know where or when Nemesis is going to show up, so the game gets very tense. But even though he's really tough, Nemesis can be taken down. It's just a matter of having enough supplies and skill to do so. At the same time, you have to consider whether taking Nemesis on is actually worth it, because every bullet and healing item you use while fighting him is one you won't have when going up against the many other enemies in the game. If you do manage to take Nemesis down, chances are he'll be right back up in a matter of seconds. But if you can take him down again, he'll produce a pool of purple blood and remain motionless until taking off when you leave the area. This will stop him from chasing you around the environment for the time being. But not only that, you can obtain a special item from his body. Sometimes he'll drop parts of guns that you can assemble together to help in your journey. Other times, he'll drop 3 first aid sprays in a convenient case that only takes up 1 inventory space. And his final drop is an assault rifle. If you already have the assault rifle because you're replaying the game, he'll instead drop infinite ammo for 1 gun of your choosing. This is why Nemesis is such a great element of the game. He not only provides a challenge to first-time players who are just trying to survive, but he also provides a challenge to experienced players who are trying to collect all of his drops. This sort of optional objective is something you don't see very often anymore, but it's just a simple aspect of the game that adds a lot to it. At certain points when you're confronted by Nemesis, you're given 2 different ways to proceed. Depending on what you choose, you can sometimes get a free hit on Nemesis and get an item from him without actually having to fight for it. Sometimes you can choose to fight him when you have an ally with you, which can make the fight significantly easier. Or if you don't want to deal with him at all, you can choose to hide and he won't pursue you for that segment of the game. As the game progresses, Nemesis begins to mutate into different forms. After injecting Jill with a T-virus through one of his tentacles, he takes on so much damage that the tentacles in his body begin to grow and erupt out of him. Now he has a collection of tentacles coming out of his hand, which he uses for various whip attacks. After taking on so much damage that he loses multiple body parts, and then getting dumped in a vat of chemicals, Nemesis comes back once more in a new form. He's been whittled down so much at this point that he's just a small mound of meat, but after feasting on the corpse of a tyrant, he begins to grow new appendages and increase in size considerably. Now he's this huge amalgamation of body parts and tentacles. In this form, his primary attack is spraying acid all over the area. Surprisingly, he's even more resilient in this form. He's only taken down after suffering multiple direct hits from a rail cannon. And even then, he isn't killed, just severely crippled. But even when Nemesis has been reduced to a squirming pile of flesh, he still pushes on in his mission to eliminate S.T.A.R.S. This time you're able to finish him off for good.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Since Resident Evil 3, Nemesis has been featured in many different forms of media. For example, he appears in Project Cross Zone for the 3DS and is even a playable character in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which is really cool. Certain portrayals of him are just weird though. Nemesis is featured heavily in Resident Evil Apocalypse, the second in that god-awful Resident Evil movie series. Instead of being a monster specifically created by Umbrella to hunt and kill for them, Nemesis is turned into a sympathetic and tragic villain. They decided to make him a character from the first film who got infected by the T-virus and experimented on by Umbrella until eventually turning into his current form. Because of this, they changed the look of his one eye to give him a sense of humanity, which really throws off the vicious look of the original design. They also gave him a minigun, which isn't that bad of a change, but I prefer how the original Nemesis got up close and personal with his targets, and only took out his long-range weapon when he needed to. This Nemesis just blasts people from a distance if he can. Aside from that, they make him have a hand-to-hand fight with the movie's fanfiction character Alice, have him lose, and then have a cheesy scene where Nemesis remembers who he truly is and becomes a hero for the last section of the movie before accidentally killing himself by shooting a helicopter down with a rocket. Yeah, pretty lame portrayal. Other portrayals of him haven't been too great either. In the Umbrella Chronicles, Nemesis shows up for the portion of that game that covers Resident Evil 3, and for some reason he sounds really robotic.
S.T.A.R.S.
What?
Nemesis only turns into his second form in this game and then falls off a roof and dies. It's a pretty weak recreation of him if you ask me. He also appears in Operation Raccoon City, and as you'd expect, he isn't that good in it. I mean, just listen to him.
S.T.A.R.S.
Seriously, it's one word. Is it really that hard to get right? Well, that was Nemesis, one of the most persistent monsters Umbrella ever created. He brings a lot of challenging and memorable moments to the game, all of which really solidify him as one of the greatest survival horror villains out there. Just stay away from some of the other things he's featured in because they don't even begin to compare. Anyway, thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video.